everybody, Debbie here from Craftywafty, and today I'm going to show you how I make my album covers. This is going to be a series of how to make the covers, how to make the hinges, and how to make all the individual different pages that I normally do. Now, the standard album that I normally make is an 8x8 inch, and that's what I'm going to be showing you today. Is first of all is how to make the actual album, and I'm going to show two methods of how you can do this. Okay, so first of all, I've got some construction board. These are A4 size, and they are about 1500 micron. Okay, so they're quite thick ones, which is what we like, and we need something to have a bit of sturdiness in there. So first of all, I'm going to cut these A4 pages down. Now, normally I can get one album cover out of 2 A4 pages. Okay, so here we are. So this is my little Omni grid. I absolutely love these. This is a nice big one, which is ideal for cutting out album covers. So I'm just going to, so I've just lined this up on the 8-inch. So I'm just going to trim this down. I always make sure as well that when I'm doing any new albums, I have quite a nice sharp blade in there. I don't throw this bit away because this bit could become the spine. So I'm just going to put that to one side. So that's 8 inches there, and we're just going to turn this round. I'm just going to line this up like so. Obviously, if you've got a really strong guillotine, that would work too, but I find that with some guillotines, they don't like to go through construction boards, so I always sort of hand cut these anyway. There we go, 3 of those. So that's one album cover done, and then we're going to do exactly the same on the next one. So I'm just going to line that up 8 inches. Now, what I love about this size album is it's not too big, it's not too small. It's a bit like Goldilocks, it's just right in the middle. And 8 inch means that you can get quite easily up to 5x7 photos in there without too much trouble. So that's what I quite prefer to have, and lots of 6x4s and obviously 3x4s and so forth. You can get into this sort of size of album, but that does depend on what you do with your pages. So we're just cutting that. So that is, they should be, and there are 8x8s. Okay, and then I'm just going to take one of the offcuts. That in the bin out of the way, and I'm just going to trim this down. Now, depending on the size of the album that I'm going to make and how many hinges I'm going to put in will determine the width of what the spine is going to be. So what I'll do is I'll do the biggest one, which is normally I do 5 hinges in there. Okay, so if I'm doing 5 hinges, then the spine that I normally do is a 3-inch. Okay, but you can alter the depth as much as you like, and it really depends as well as to what you're going to put on your pages as to the depth that you might need your album for anyway. But I'm going to go with this one. So I'm just do that. I'm just going to turn that round and cut off the other little bit so it's all the same height. Just measure that up. Okay, like so, and here we go. Okay, I'm just going to pop that to one side. So these are our 2 front and back and our spine. Okay, so these will sit, whoops, look at my glue thing over there. These will sit quite nicely on the mat there, so you can see. Now, as I said, there are 2 methods that you can, well, actually, potentially there are 3 methods thinking about it. You can either construct it with construction tape or tiger tape. I get mine from Cool Cats Crafts. Okay, this you would go around all the sides and then come down the middle to hold it all together. So that's one method. You could use this just to come down the strips here and ink all around the edges if you wanted, but to be honest, you might as well just carry on using the construction tape. Or the other method is that you actually get some papers and you join these together, and this is what's going to cover on the back, on the outside. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you this method first, which is the covering of the album on the outside. So I've got 3 sheets of A4 here. Let's just move them to one side. I'm not going to trim these down because I'll do that once I've stuck the album on, but it's up to you. If you feel that, you know, you don't want to be working with this paper quite as big as it is. Now, obviously 8x8 for us is or the A4 paper rather, is a little bit bigger than the 8x8. But as you can see, if I was to put them going landscape, you don't get a lot to fold over, so they're going to have to go vertical. Okay, and I normally leave a good inch or so to come over, but what I'm going to do is so as not to waste all the paper, I'll bring it down here and have it at a inch all the way round. Okay, so that's where I'm going, but first of all I need to join these together. So I'm just going to put a bit of red liner tape along this edge. Now the red liner tape I use, we get from our Craftywafty shop, and I tend to use either 9mm or 12mm. But if you don't have any red liner tape, then other tape will do. But I like to use this because it's really quite strong and it holds it all together nicely. Whoops. I've got lots of bits on the side here. Right, okay. So I'm just working out. You see here, you can see I've only taken the tape up so far because when I cut that bit off, then I can utilise that for something else. So that will sort of sit there. And then what we'll do is we're literally just going to glue that on top. And then I'm going to have to do the same on the other side. So I'm just going to put the tape on here. And just to give me a little guide as to how far I've come up with the tape. Just going to stick that down like so. I'm just going to snip that. Okay, and that will be fine. So that will be joining that together. So let's just do that. Oh, let's get a little burnish tool out actually. Here we are. Just run that along. This is the fiddly bit. And I've got it. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to pop this, line it up on the top. So I'm going just over the tape. I'm just covering that like so. Just check the other side. There we are. That's lovely. So that's stuck that down. And then I'm going to attach the final sheet. So we're going to do exactly the same. Let's make sure that's all down. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay. And I'm just going to pop that like so. That's going to seal down. There we are. So that's my big bit for the cover for the outside. Now to stick these down, you can do this one of 2 ways. You can either fill it with red liner tape going across, or if you've got some A4 adhesive sheets, you can stick that on and then you can trim it down to do that. But today I'm just going to go with the red liner tape. So we're just going to pop strips. Now we do wider red liner tape on our shop. I think we go up to 2 inches actually. So that would be ideal for doing this, but I'll be honest, I put mine somewhere, can't find it. So we'll just go with this. And we're just going to stick that along like so. I'm just going to put a few strips. And I'm going to do this for the front and the back cover. There we are. I'm just going to put another strip in. So I'm trying to even it out, but I will put some glue in between this as well, so it will stick properly down on there. I'm just going to do that one. And this one. And finally that one. So that's the first page, first cover done. And then I'm going to repeat exactly the same on these two. So let's just do this on the cover. There we go. And at the top. So, and oops, this stuff is not very forgiving. So once it sticks, which is why I like to use it, because basically, you know, it's got a good strong bond to it, and that's what you want on your covers, because we don't want that to come apart, because that's what's going to be holding it all together. So we're just going to do that one, and then I'm just coming in doing these other little ones like so. That's it. And two more. One and two. Okay, and then finally our spine, which was the 3-inch one. That is the one. Looked a little bit smaller then for a minute. Let me just check that. It's all right, I've got other bits of stuff here with me, so I'm just trying to check. Now that is 3 inches. Perfect. Okay, and then what I'm going to do for this one is that I'm going to go at the top and the bottom. And then I'm just going to do a couple of strips coming down like so. One in the middle. And here we are. One either side. Okay. So that's our lovely red liner tape all on. So I'm just going to go over and give these a burnish. Just make sure that red liner tape is truly stuck. And the same on here. Make sure they're all nicely stuck down. Okay. And then this final one, we're just going to come across here. There we go. All right. So now we've got that sorted out, we're going to line up our paper, our covers rather, on the bottom of our cardstock here. And as I said, I normally leave about 1 inch or so, just so I've got enough room to sort of fold over, and then I'll have a quarter or about 1/8 of an inch gap there, and then the other one will sort of line in like so. Now, and what I try and do is use a ruler just to help me with the, actually let's go 3/4 around here, so I think that should be enough actually, 3/4 of an inch, and then I can just line that up on there, and then using this ruler here just allows me to get my measurements right for when I come to stick down, so I'm sticking it down on flat. So this is a fun bit. We now have to peel off all of these. And here we go. Let's just do these next ones. And then what? Whoops, that didn't quite stick down. Actually, let's get my pokey tool. That would probably be easier to. There we go. And then I can peel these off. There we are, that's much better. Look at that, that's coming off a treat. There we go. And then I'm just going to add a bit of glue. Now the glue I like to use is a bookbinding glue. So I'm just going to put glue firstly on all the bits of tape, like so. And then just put a little bit of glue in between. With the bookbinding glue, you don't need a huge amount of glue. And what I love about this glue is it has a lower water content, which means that when you stick it down, it doesn't bubble up the papers and that. So, which is fantastic. Right, so I'm going to turn this over. So I've gone here. Let's just reline up my ruler. Going along here 3/4 of an inch. At the bottom, I'm coming in at about 3/4 of an inch, and I'm just going to line that up, and I'm just going to drop that down. Okay, now as you can see, that's given me my 3/4 of an inch, so I've got a nice sort of edging coming all the way around that, which will be plenty enough to fold over. Okay, now the next one is obviously the spine, and I like to leave about 1/8 of a gap between them because you need to allow space for the covers to fold. So I'll just take off this red liner tape. And again, I'm just going to add a bit of glue to this. There we go. And turn that round. Okay, oops. Red liner glue sticking to me. Red liner tape, rather. Right, I'm just going to run this along. Like so, along the tape. And the reason why I put it on the tape is because this stuff is so unforgiving. Once it sticks, that by adding a little bit of glue gives you a little bit of wiggle room. And we all love a little bit of wiggle room. Right, okay, so I'm now bringing that ruler along just a little bit, making sure that it's sitting at the bottom straight. And I'm just putting my measurements in there. I've left 1/8 of an inch, and I'm just dropping that down. There we go, like so. Give that all a good press. And now I'm just going to move that along just a fraction, just to do the last bit. So again, we're just going to repeat the process, like so. I'll just pop these on here. Okay, and then we'll just add a bit of the glue. But like I said, if you don't want to use the red liner tape, you can use the double-sided tape sheets, which you can just cut and trim to size and use those as well. Okay, and again, we're just going for a little bit of glue along the tape. It's squeaky a little bit. A little bit squeaky, it does, sounds. Right, okay, I'll have my cat up here in a minute, thinking there's a mouse up here, but there's not. It's just squeaky glue and tape. There we go. Right, okay, I'm just going to turn it over, and again, I'm just going to line that up along the bottom. That's my 3/4. I want to leave 1/8 of an inch gap, and I'm just going to line that up. I'm just going to drop that down like so, and there we are. Okay, so that's all done. Now obviously we've got all this extra card around here, so I'm just going to use my ruler and trim that off. So as we're going 3/4 of an inch all the way round, I'm just going to line that up and trim that first bit off. There we go. And I'm just going to turn it round. I might have to do this in 2 parts. Let's have a little look. So we'll come line that up. It's a little bit tricky. There's that bit. Okay, that was the odd bit. Let's pull that down. and then we'll come along the top. Don't panic if you're not exactly bang on. It's because this bit will be folded over anyway, and that gives me those couple of bits left there like that I can possibly use for maybe a stacked pocket or something like that. Okay, so we've got our album cover done. All right, now I've used A4 paper, but you can obviously use 12 by 12 papers. All right, and obviously looking at where the seams are and everything, I don't know if you can see, but we've got one seam here and the other seam is there. So this one I will use as my back. So what I will do is I'll just put a little B for the back and the F for the front, and I'll just put a top and a top on there, because when you come to put it together and everything else, it's easier to have that on there. Right, now we've got that all done and stuck, I'm just going to run over with my little bone folder just to make sure that is all securely stuck down, and it feels like that, so that's good. And now what we're going to do is we're going to deal with turning over the edges. But a little tip that I use, sometimes when I cut my corners diagonally at like a 45-degree angle, sometimes I find that I might cut it a little short, and then you end up getting a bit of the construction board showing. So what I do is I get my Sharpie and I just colour in that corner bit, and then I'll just lift that up and just run it along on the inside like so, just so that if I did happen to miscut it a little bit, and trust me, it's easier to do this now than after you've cut it and stuck it down. So we'll just give this, and I'm just doing it on the 4 corners, so just a little tip for you now. Okay, just run that along there. I'm just going over a little bit, I'm not going too mad. There we go. And I'll just come over on this corner, but hopefully when I cut it, it will be fine. All right, so our next bit is just to give the papers a little bit of stretch. I'm just going to gently run the bone folder or my Bernie all the way along, just to put a slight indent into that paper. That just helps stretch those fibres a little bit, so that when we come to fold it over, we shouldn't have, hopefully, any rips or tears in the paper. But this is why it's important as well to make sure that the quality of the paper you're using is good, especially for the album. And I'm just going to gently give this a little nudge, just sort of fold that up there, just to give that a gentle little workout. Just checking that's looking good, because it will just help us later on when we come to fold these over completely, that the paper's had a little bit of a movement on there, just to help with that. Okay, so now what we need to do is stick this onto that. So again, I'm going to use my red liner tape, and I'm going to tape this right to the edge, because I want to make sure that I get a really good seal on this. And I'm going the whole length of the album cover, but I'm not too worried about going right to the end here, because I will be cutting off that last little bit in the on the corners. So I'm going to do the 2 long lengths first, and then I'll go in and do the smaller ones. But again, I'm taking that tape right up to the edge. There we go. Just move that along. There we go. Just keep carrying that on like so. I'm just going to snip that, and then we're just going to come around and do the ends. And what I will do is I'll put glue on here as well, so that will just help stick that down. And then we go just the final side like so. Okay. And the reason I put the red liner tape on before I cut the corners, it means that when I cut the corners, that red tape will be right up against that edge. So that will help. But you'll see what I mean in a minute. Okay, so when you're coming to cut your corners, you need to make sure that you allow enough of the black card away from that corner as to the depth of the card. Because when that folds over, we want to make sure we've got enough card left to be able to do that fold bit going over. Okay, so let me get my other little ruler. Can't find it, I've put it somewhere. Right, we'll use this one. Now there are gadgets out there that you can buy that you can just sit this on the end and it will do that, but I'm going to allow about one of my little markers there, and it's always better to probably cut less off because you can then trim off another little bit more. So I'm just lining that up with a little bit of a gap. I'm just going to take that right through. Now you can see what I mean about putting the red liner tape on first, because then when you do make that cut, that red liner tape is right up against that edge, which is just perfect. So now you can see that where you've got that, when that folds over, might have a little nick on there, but I can show you what to do with that. But I know that that cover is going to cover that corner. Okay, the outside cover is going to cover the corner. So I'm just going to repeat on the other four. I'm saying a 45-degree angle. I mean, you know, it's as near as damn it. You don't need to get a protractor out or anything like that, but we're just cutting it across at a diagonal. I like to use a ruler for this, but you can cut it straight across with a pair of scissors if you want. Okay, and then we'll just come to do this last one. We'll just come out a fraction like so. There we go, and there we have it. All right, so there are 4 corners, and what we call this in the trade is that they've been mitered. Okay, so now the idea is to, again, just go round and fold over, because we've got the tape on there as well, just to see how that's going to look. I think that's going to be fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the red liner tape off and then run a bit of glue, and then I'm going to fold that first. I always do the long edges first. I just find it's better to get those out the way. Okay, I'm just going to run a little bit of glue down that bit that doesn't have any tape on it. I'm just going to come back. So we got the squeaky glue back again. There we go. Let's move my tools in the way. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll start at one end, and as I'm folding it over, I'm giving it a really good press as I go along, because I want to sort of pull that card almost over the edge, because what I don't want is like bubbles along that edge of the album cover. So I'm just giving that a good pull across, and then I get my little burny tool, and then we're just going to burnish that across. Now these parts here where we come down past the either side of the spine, I'm just going to give that a little rub like that, because I'm just stretching those fibres again in there, because I just want to make sure that they will fold nicely without sort of cracking. Okay, so far we've got a nice edge along there, and then we're going to come along and do exactly the same on the other side. So I'm just going to take that tape off, going to add a little bit more glue like so, and just going to add a little bit of glue on that. Okay, and again I'm just going to start folding that up and bring that over, smoothing that down as we go along. I just want to make sure that that sits nicely on there. And just fold that along. Okay, and just fold that along. Those creases, make sure we get those all. So we want to make sure that our edging is nice. And again, I'm just going to rub that along with the bone folder. There we are. And I'm just going to give that a little press again. Like I said earlier, it's just to stretch those paper fibres. Make sure that's sealed down. We'll just have a little look. And that's a nice edge on there as well. So we're almost done with our album cover. So here, actually let me turn it around this way so you can see. So here on this edge here, I've got a little notch, a little bit more than on this side. So what I tend to do is just give it a little push in with my nail or a finger. Okay, so just knock that down a little bit, and then that's going to fold over, and then that will hide that as I come in on that side as well. So let's do this one. So again, we're going to take off the red liner tape. I'm going to add a little bit of glue, and then we're going to fold that over. Okay, and hopefully where we've put our Sharpie pen, that if there was any gaps in that fold or the cut on the corner, that we're not going to see them anyway. So let's just fold that over. I'm giving that a little pull of tension just to make sure that that is folding over nicely. And just get my bone folder tool. There we go. And we go over like so. And as you can see, we've got a nice mitered corner. It was a bit close on that one. Look, that's just gone over just a fraction. So repeat again on the other side. I'm just going to tuck those in on there so that when I fold it over, it will give it a nice finish. I'm just going to take that off. Okay, glue, just a little bit of glue, and I'm just going to run the glue along there. So this video is me showing you how to make your cover for an 8-inch square album, okay, using paper to cover the outside of the album and construct it to hold it all together. All right, so there we are. We've got a lovely flat album, and now I'm just going to gently fold those over, and you can see where I've creased in on those edges here with the spine, that folds up beautifully. And that is our album cover method 1. All right. Now method 2, like I said earlier, so here's another one. I've already pre-cut this. This is where we use the construction tape to put the album together. Okay. Now the easiest way of doing this is to literally go around 3 sides of the construction of the square first with the construction tape. Do the 2 tops, and then you're going to do the 3 sides again going round. Okay, so let's just do that. So I'm going to start off with the spine. What I do is I just cut myself a little bit of tape. I'm not overly worried if it's not quite the exact distance on here. I'm just going to place that in the middle. There's my lovely scissors. I'm just going to snip that off. I'm just going to fold that over. Let's move that up a bit so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got tape either side. I'm just going to trim those bits because I will be wrapping more tape around these edges anyway, so I'm not overly worried. This is probably, well, this method is obviously quicker than the other one, and it doesn't use up all your cardstock but you will need some construction tape or tiger tape to do this. So I'll just place it on there, just cut that. I'm just going to fold that over, like so. I'm just going to trim off those couple of little bits there. That's it, just fold those in like that. And then the 3 sides on each of the covers. Now you can do this one of 2 ways. You can do one side at a time. So I'll do that on this one. Just trim that. Let's fold that over, which might be probably, if I'm honest, the easiest one, rather than using the full length and trying to wrap it round. That does get a little bit, especially when you're working with like 8-inch album covers. And then I'm just going to come along. I'm just going to cut that. I'll rest that on there like so. Again, I'm not overly worried if it doesn't quite cover. Right, and we'll just put that over. Again, as I'm putting this tape round it, I'm just giving it a little pull just to make sure I don't get any bubbles. So that's that side. I will go around and smooth these all anyway, and then we'll do the other side. Oops. stuff is quite sticky. Right, okay. And I'm just going to rest that again, going halfway down. And we're just going to fold that over. But will have the same impact, and it will hold it together just as well as doing the paper. So that's 3 sides on there. And now we're just going to do the 3 sides on this one. Cut that like so. Right, let's line that up on there. There we go, just folding that over. Now, obviously, because we are going round just around the edges, you're not going to have the album cover completely covered in black, all right? But if you've folded it correctly, you should have enough of a trim of where it's been folded over to be able to just stick your patterned card on top, okay? So it does save you, in using this method, I find it does save you using more black cardstock than you need, okay? And also it saves you using loads of red liner tape as well, because all you're going to do is just stick on your cardstock with glue once you've finished and done these. Okay, and we're just going to find the edge. There we are. Let's trim that off. So 2 methods, obviously depending on what you've got to hand to use. Okay, I'm just going to trim off that last bit. I'm going to pop this on like so. That's not quite in the middle. Come over just a little bit. There we go. Right, just stick that down, fold that over. Okay, and then I can go around with my bone folder and just rub out any little bits. That bit's tucking up just a little bit. Snip that bit off, and there we go. Right, now obviously the difference between the corners on here is that you've got that overlap there, whereas on our other one they're mitered corners. So depending on what look you want to go for as well. So if you see what I mean here, you've got that nice sort of mitered corner on the card one, whereas on here it's just literally the tape where it's been folded over. So it depends what finish you're looking for. Okay, so now we're going to come to putting these together. So I'm going to do one cover and the spine first, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the tape. I'm going to, whoops, not try and knock everything over. Oh, let's pop you up there out of the way. Stay. Move it to the side so it's knocking everything over. Right, okay, so I'm just going to run that tape like so, and I'm going to put this not quite halfway over, because if you remember I need to leave about 1/8 of an inch gap. Okay, so I'm sticking down one side. Now you can see now why we only did tape round 4 sides, because round 3 sides, because if I put it round 4 sides we will be doubling up and bulking up that spine bit. And I'm just going to, I'm eyeballing this. Okay, so roughly 1/8 of an inch, and again I'm just making sure that it's all level with the top and the bottom. Okay, now I've stuck that down, and again you can see why I've only put the black tape on the tops and not down the sides, because we're going to wrap this. That bit comes up, okay, and then I'm going to bring this tape down, and I'm just going to cut that so we get a bit of an overlap like so. And I'm just going to gently run my finger, and as I'm running my finger down there I'm just pushing that into the gap by the spine, and now that should fold quite nicely. And then we're just going to do exactly the same on the other side. So run the tape this time. Whoops, really need something to hold that steady. There we go. Right, I'm going to put that not quite halfway. So that's sticking that down, and I'm getting my other cover. Now this is also a good time to see what you want for the outside or the inside on your corners, but I'll be happy with it that way. I'm just going to put that down again. It's about 1/8 of an inch gap. There we are. And now I'm just going to run that up there, and then I'm going to bring that tape down. Let's snip that over like so, and now I'm just going to run my finger from the top. That's it. From the top, coming down into that middle bit like so, and there we are. And that is that album cover done. So I'll just run a little line along there like so, and that is it. Okay, so now you can see they are 2 methods that I use for covering my album, so depending on what finish you want. Okay, so like I said, the corners on this one are mitered, whereas on the other one you just get the overlaps of where the tape was. And although this one uses obviously more cardstock and more red liner tape, or the A4 adhesive papers, okay, if you was going to stick that down on your album covers, whereas the construction tape or the tiger tape, you're literally just sticking that round. And then when you come to put your papers on there, if you're going to leave 1/8 of an inch black showing, you've got enough of this black tape tucked over that you can do that, and then obviously that's going to cover up all of those. So there we are. That's 2 ways of covering your albums. So I hope you liked watching part 1 of our little series. The next one, part 2, will be how to make different size hinges to go into your albums, depending on how many pages and that you want to put in there. So thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.